Hello everyone, my name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 12.13, Fantastic Farewells. You could also call it episode 100 of the podcast. Thank you for listening. I don't really have anything clever or interesting to say about it, so I'm just going to keep it simple. Thanks. Normally, with the beginning of a new streak of episodes, I would try to do something clever with the introduction to try to catch your attention, or maybe something that's tied into whatever is going on in the comic that I would be discussing. But issue 23 of Fantastic Four, which was originally published in November of 1999, with our familiar creative team of Chris Claremont, Salvador Larroca, Art Thibert, and Liquid, didn't really lend itself to my own style of presentation. I have been fighting this script for like 2 days now, so screw it, I'm not going to keep fighting it. I'm just going to explain why it doesn't work for me instead. Our first page is set inside of a courtroom. The camera is next to a judge, but it's angled so that the judge is off-panel, and we look towards the defendants and their supporters behind them. There are two main groups of people present. The first is the Avengers, represented by Captain America, the Scarlet Witch, Firestar, and Justice. The rest of the people are the Fantastic Four, of course. In the very back of the courtroom is Allison Stewart, struggling to keep Puppy under control. Sue wrangles Franklin towards the front, while Valeria looks on anxiously. Johnny just watches Reed, while Ben sits next to him calmly, dressed in a nice button up top. Next to Ben is Bounty, her red leather jacket gone, leaving her in a zip-up black leather top. Seated before them are the defending legal team, Matt Murdock and Jaren Hogarth. Jaren is nervous about letting Reed speak freely in court as the judge. Richard Law and Order Wolf is a very tough man. But Matt, who is secretly the vigilante daredevil, trusts that Reed knows what he's doing. Finally, in the very front, we have Reed Richards, who addresses Judge Wolf. The judge is willing to let Reed explain their situation, but he warns him that everything he says will be documented and may be used against him. If Reed is willing to commit to that, then the judge accuses the Avengers and the Fantastic Four of causing a riot at San Diego Comic-Con. Does Reed deny this? Calmly, Reed says yes, he does. There was a riot, yes, and they were involved, sure, but they were not the cause of the riot. We then jump to that riot presented to us in a 2-page spread. Sure enough, we are at San Diego Comic-Con, and the two superhero teams are brawling with each other and a group of men wearing black and blue combat uniforms that are armed with guns. In the background, a very specific Spanish artist talks to a very specific comic book author, amazed by the very fight that they're seeing. The artist, speaking only in Spanish, comments that the very first time he comes to California, he gets to see the very heroes whose adventures he chronicles. And he gets to see them fighting against the heroes drawn by his friend, Carlos Pacheco. This is amazing! The author, named Chris, says that he doesn't speak Spanish, so he doesn't have an idea what the artist is saying, but he introduces the cast and then suggests that they book it before they get hurt. We then jump back again to where our actual narrative starts. And that second jump, is why I've been having trouble starting this issue. Ordinarily, if Reed had responded to the judge's, "Did you do it?" with a shocking, "Yes, but let me explain why," well, that would be a great hook, and I would deliver that line and roll into my name is Ben introduction. And who wouldn't be interested in seeing how the Avengers and Fantastic Four started a flooping riot at Comic-Con? That sounds dope. Add into that the idea that the Fantastic Four are responsible for the legal repercussions of their actions, and that's interesting. Superheroes as a whole are generally not held responsible for their actions, and we've watched the Fantastic Four bounce from one problem to the next over the course of year 2, but resolve almost nothing. So getting to watch them resolve their actions after seeing how they got here would actually be really refreshing. Plus, Reed is the one person presenting their defense, and while he is a super genius, he isn't much of a people person. So watching him go up against a lawyer could be really interesting, actually. But a good legal battle needs a back and forth to it. We need an argument where one side would make an accusation and then the other would disprove it, that kind of thing. But Reed just immediately goes into laying out what happened. There is no back and forth, he's just relating the story to us. This is not a legal story. It is a superhero adventure and it is presented as normal. And that's pretty frustrating for me. Plus, having characters like Matt Murdock and Jaren Hogarth represent the Fantastic Four is actually a great setup. Someone who is familiar with the Marvel Universe would know that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, a lawyer who is also a vigilante, and Jaren Hogarth works for Daniel Rand, aka the Immortal Iron Fist. These two people are perhaps the best equipped people in the Marvel Universe to legally defend the Fantastic Four, save for perhaps She-Hulk, and we'll see that she's occupied at the moment. But they don't get to defend the Fantastic Four. They are literally ignored by Claremont's narrative, so why bother putting them in? Claremont could have made these two nameless legal eagles, and nothing in this story would have changed. This leads to the core of my complaint here, because sure, Claremont kind of ruined my hopes of a dope opening, but that isn't my main problem. My main problem is the overall tone. Take that 2-page scene. I would argue that Claremont knows that he didn't hook us with that legal scene, so he tries for another tact. An action scene. No one buys the Fantastic Four so that they can watch an hour-long courtroom drama. They want fantasy, action, adventure, action sequences. So Claremont does an immediate about-face, casting his line out into the waters once again, hoping to hook us. But that doesn't work for me either. First off, the overall stakes of that particular scene are low. We know that whatever is happening in that scene, the Avengers and the Fantastic Four are okay afterwards. We see them sitting in the courtroom. We know that they're fine, so the stakes are pretty low. Secondly, our last issue just featured heroic characters, the She-Hulk, the Thing, and Bounty, being controlled and fighting against our heroes. And while sure, this story isn't necessarily a follow-up to that story, yet we will get there, it is the same basic concept. Good guys fighting good guys. And without a good, interesting motivation for that fight to happen, I don't care. And finally, Claremont's storytelling focus for those 2 pages isn't the sheer power of the Avengers or the Fantastic Four wondering how they got into this situation or how they're going to get out of it. No, it's on a gag. That Spanish artist that I mentioned is the series penciler Salvador Larroca, and the author is Chris Claremont. This is our creative team. Having them talk about what's going on, while a useful tool for introducing the Avengers cast, because just because you buy the Fantastic Four, that doesn't mean you're familiar with the Avengers, distracts us from the very characters that we're supposed to be focused on. To be fair, there are going to be a number of references and in-jokes throughout this comic. Claremont and Larroca keep a pretty light tone overall. For example, when Larroca mentions his friend, Carlos Pacheco, who draws the Avengers, this is a reference to Avengers Forever, a 12-issue series that Pacheco had drawn. The judge overseeing the Fantastic Four's case, Richard Wolff, that's a nod to author Dick Wolf, who was also the executive producer on Law and Order, hence his nickname here. And I have to admit that I like these comedic elements. They're very fun, especially for a comic that is set during and at San Diego Comic-Con. But Claremont opens the book with a serious, dramatic court scene, then moves on, do an action sequence, but then he tries to use a comedic tone with a meta guest appearance. God, I think I need some Icy Hot for my neck, because I am getting whiplash. Sure, open with the courtroom scene, but have a lawyer represent the convention, and then they spend the issue arguing Reed's version of the story. Or start with the brawl, but do a, "you're probably wondering how I got here" type of thing, and then just move us on into the comic already. Or open with Claremont and Larroca arriving at the convention and getting ready for the day, but then these brawling heroes busts into the room and they need to run. Pick a tone, establish it, and then run with it, guys. Any one of these could have worked fine alone. Together, though, they're all too much for me. Reed takes us back a bit in time, recapping the last issue for us. She-Hulk, The Thing, and Bounty had been taken by the authorities at the end of the issue, as they did destroy millions of dollars worth of property. Sue and Johnny meet with Murdoch and Hogarth about this incarceration, protesting it, and any further punishments. Sue explains that Reed has already learned that nanites were responsible for their rampage, and he is working on a solution to that problem right now. But until that cure can be implemented, the district attorney is going to insist on punishment. Although, maybe it could help if they spoke to Reed himself. Unfortunately, they can't, Sue says. Reed is dealing with a family problem. That problem being Valeria Von Doom. Reed and Alisonde open the door to a previously non-existent room in Pier 4. It opens into a cute, bright room fully decorated with posters, a neat bed, a nice computer setup, and a pretty good stereo system too. Alisonde is astonished by the room's existence, but Reed is fairly nonplussed. The entire warehouse is actually a tesseract, its fabric expandable into space and time. It can expand and contract as necessary by the residents. The real question, to Reed, is why Valeria is here to begin with. According to Valeria, she was going to bed one night and she walked into this reality, an act that she calls time-skipping. The pair move through the room, studying artifacts from Valeria's life, looking for clues. There's a Return of the Jedi soundtrack CD, a sailing trophy, a certificate from NASA acknowledging Valeria as a pilot astronaut. There's a photo with Spider-Man, that's neat. Another photo from Sue and Doom's wedding. That photo bothers Reed for a moment, so he picks up a piece of technology instead. It's something that she built, clearly, and it seems familiar to him. Valeria's intellect honestly impresses Reed. He says that he couldn't like her more if she was his own child. Alisonde suggests that may be the point. Perhaps she's a Trojan horse. Reed admits that's possible, but his main theory right now is actually something different. Valeria might be a creation of Franklin's imagination. He did create an entire world once in order to save his family. So, if Franklin is feeling lonely, why wouldn't he create a sister? If that's the case, though, then why would he make her the daughter of the Fantastic Four's greatest enemy? That is an interesting theory. I had completely forgotten this idea. Wow. So maybe Franklin had one of his prophetic dreams, or maybe he dreamed of an alternate reality, and in doing so, he saw Valeria. Then, liking the idea of having a sister, or maybe just being lonely, Franklin then either made a copy of her in the 616 reality, or just stole her outright. That's certainly a cool idea, and if it's the truth, then I would say that the Fantastic Four are doing kind of a terrible job of policing their son's powers and teaching him to use them responsibly like they promised Roma they would do all that long ago. The story then deftly moves over to Valeria, Franklin, and Puppy, who are inside Reed's lab. Franklin and Puppy are fighting over a bag of potato chips, while Valeria sits at one of Reed's computers. She has some sort of device on her head, which allows her to scan a holographic representation of the Thing's current biology. Reed did this once before in issue 3 with the Iconoclast in order to dissect it. She then finds the nanites that are infecting the Thing, Bounty, and She-Hulk. This is what caused their violent behavior in issue 22. It seems that the devices are rewiring their victims' nervous systems, making them susceptible to suggestion. Now, she just needs to find a way to remove the nanites and return their victims to normal. While Franklin was listening to his sister drone on, he also moved over to the lab's windows, which look out into the waters of the Hudson River. Namorita, the Atlantean heroine of the New Warriors and one-time girlfriend of Johnny Storm, pauses at the window, smiles at Franklin, and waves. And for just an instant, in a single panel, Namorita is different. Her costume, which is normally all white save for her bare feet and arms with some fish netting at the shoulders, changes. In Franklin's vision, she wears an inconvenient green cape and pointed green armor. And then the panel moves on, and she's back to normal, swimming away. Shocked, Franklin spins around, trying to explain what he just saw to Valeria, but in classic child delivery, he has no punctuation and just kind of rambles on, missing the point entirely. But when turning around, he's surprised to find his father standing behind him, a hand to his chin in thought. Franklin insists that what he saw was real, and Reed confirms that he saw it too. That is interesting. Hearing Reed's voice, Valeria takes off her headset and apologizes for using Reed's lab without his permission. Reed isn't worried about it. If she was smart enough to bypass his locks, then she's earned the right. He examines her headset, finding it to be the next iteration of the device that he saw in her room, and she used it to improve upon his own technology. He examines it as Valeria explains about the nanites. They can't be reprogrammed or they'll explode, and in exploding, they will also kill their hosts. But she has traced them back to their source, a facility in San Diego. So that's where they need to go next. Before doing so, Franklin asks Reed if he's looked through his spyglass, because a storm is coming and it doesn't feel right. Reed lifts his son into his arms. Yes, he knows about the storm. First, they'll save their friends, then they'll save the universe. Yeah, the universe has only been in catastrophic danger since like issue 5, so we might as well just put it off for one more day. In San Diego, the Human Torch flies around the exterior of the convention center. He returns to the hotel where Franklin and Alessandre are afterwards. Johnny compliments Alessandre's outfit. Franklin says that Johnny tells all his girlfriends that, and Alessandre kind of blows off the comment. They need to get moving. Because, you see, they are the distraction, drawing people's attention to the Fantastic Four being at the convention, and not upstate, at a high-tech facility that Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, Marvel Girl, and Puppy are breaking into. The building is a classic stack of boxes, fairly boring and unassuming looking on the surface. But inside of it, massive lights illuminate smooth metal walls and precious servers. Valeria comments that the complex has almost no people at the actual site. It's almost totally automated. Other than the shipping staff, the company has focused solely on defending its ideas. Layers of sensors line the buildings, there are stacked electronic defenses, there are temperature and pressure trips, and even some good old-fashioned laser webs. Not that someone as skillful and fearless as Marvel Girl is worried. Valeria exits an air duct and just drops to the floor, plunging to the lasers. But she stops just inches from them. Above her, the Invisible Woman can't believe that she would do that. If she hadn't caught the girl at the last second, this whole mission would be ruined. Not that Valeria was worried about it, though. She knew all along that her mom would catch her. After all, from Valeria's perspective, she's been working alongside Sue her entire life. Sue glares at the girl. Do not call her mom, and don't do anything like that again. Got it? Then she moves away from the vent, telling Reed that she's gonna wring that girl's neck someday. And you can practically hear the inner smile in Reed's voice when he says that Valeria actually reminds him of Sue. She glares again, but this time at him. She'll wring his neck too. Reed then stretches into the room below, moving towards a computer console that Valeria has opened up. He warns her about Sue's temper, but she insists that she is fully capable of handling herself in the field. And Reed doesn't doubt it. But they, and Sue especially, are going to need time to acclimate to Marvel Girl's personal stylings. Using his computer costume, Reed then plugs his fingers into the computer and begins decrypting its memory. The code is kinda beautiful, and it's oddly familiar to Reed. Eager to see this for herself, Valeria hacks into the computer using her gauntlets. This triggers a defense system, dousing Valeria and Reed in a cloud and forcing them back. The Invisible Woman swoops in on an invisible field, using another projection to keep the cloud away from Reed. He goes on to explain that the cloud isn't actually a gas. It is the very nanites that they have come to get information on. The costumes that they wear should keep the two bodies free from infection, but if they breathe them in, they're going to be done. Thankfully, Sue's field keeps them free, and Valeria's own force field protects her. She's cursing nonetheless, angry at herself for making such a dumb move. Reed grabs her and they return to the air duct, but he asks if she knows what she did wrong. Valeria sighs. Yeah, there was only one seat at the console, which meant that the system was configured for one user. When she tried to access it at the same time as Reed, the system recognized that 2 users was an illegal operation, so its defenses kicked in. Valeria apologizes to Reed for the screw-up, but he takes it in stride. So long as she's learned from it, there's no harm, no foul. Once the 3 have returned to the vent and Puppy, they teleport out. The biggest takeaway from these last 2 scenes is that Claremont continues to establish Valeria's personality and skill set. I like that Reed acknowledges just how much he likes Valeria as a person, but still remains suspicious of her and her existence. As the brains of the Fantastic Four, I think that's a smart move. Plus, it shows that Reed keeps his emotions separated from his critical thinking. Valeria could be part of a plot by anyone, and the fact that she's ingratiated herself so quickly amongst the Fantastic Four could be part of that plot. And even though he suspects her, he still doesn't treat her like she's a suspect. He just waits and watches and sees what happens, and as he gathers more information, he will make a better plan. That's just Reed Richards, and I like it. Similarly, I like that Sue is still vaguely annoyed by Valeria. She doesn't hate her at this point, but she isn't Valeria's mother. She never gave birth to her, she didn't raise her, so she still bristles when the girl calls her mom. I also like that the parts of Valeria's personality that frustrate Sue, the self-confidence, that inner strength, that fearlessness, is perhaps her own greatest personality trait. Instead of opposites attracting, this is a case of similars repelling, which makes for great drama in a scene like this. I'm not sure what Franklin's vision of Namorita is supposed to indicate. Franklin and his powers have really been in the back of the narrative for most of this run. Hell, Franklin barely appeared at all during year 2. But given that Franklin might have brought on or created Valeria, is he the one responsible for transforming Namorita? Or is he just looking into another reality in this panel? Or is this another setup for an idea that Claremont is hoping to get to in like year 12 of his Fantastic Four run and we just never got to get to it? I have no idea. Reed also sees the change with Namorita, which would indicate that either Franklin made it happen or that this is some phenomenon that the both of them witnessed. Given that Franklin immediately brings up the cosmic storm that's approaching, perhaps this has something to do with that. But we've learned so little about this storm, despite how long it has been looming in the background, that I don't know if this is something that it can cause or not. We're getting into some really vague storytelling here, and it frustrates the crap out of me. I'm also mildly annoyed that Puppy seems to be listening to people other than Franklin. Claremont made it a plot point when Valeria, Bounty, Alyssa, and Franklin needed to get to Hades to rescue Alisande back in issue 21 that Puppy doesn't listen to Valeria. He only listens to Franklin. It was a plot point. This isn't me being petty. This is something Claremont put into the book and established, and now is counter-writing against. Now, it is totally possible that Puppy is willing to listen to Sue and Reed. After all, we only saw Puppy refuse to interact with Valeria. Or perhaps Valeria has spent enough time with Puppy to have earned his trust, and now he is willing to take commands. But Claremont hasn't established that, despite establishing Puppy's reluctance. So using Puppy as a convenient bus is clearly a bit frustrating to me. It is a small moment, and it is easy to overlook, and I'll fully give you that. But to me, it shows some of the cracks in Claremont's writing here. At the convention center, Johnny, Alessandro, and Franklin are taking in the sights of the convention. We've got booksellers, convention booths, there's artists doing sketches, cosplayers posing for photos, there's ads for new books, there's just a little bit of everything. And this is San Diego Comic-Con before it became a huge media movie presence. So as large as it is still a bit smaller than what we currently think of it today. Alessandro eyes a number of men who are wearing combat uniforms and are armed with what appear to be fake guns. But they look so real. Johnny comments that some cosplayers take their work very seriously. They're professionals, you know. He isn't a fan of their name, Skull, or the sinister cabal for the undermining of life and liberty. Wow, you're really working for that acronym, Claremont. The Marvel Comics booth at the convention then announces that the Avengers are there to help raise money for charity. The Skull guys tense up at this, and that makes Johnny tense up. While keeping an eye on them, he notices a large statue of the Mad Thinker's awesome android near the booth, and it begins to move. Now, I don't think we've talked about the Mad Thinker yet in Breakdown, but he is a very classic Fantastic Four foe. The Mad Thinker is a genius, hence the Thinker, but he is also a bit off his rocker, hence the Mad. He originally appeared back in Fantastic Four issue 15, way back in 1963. The Thinker tends to work in robotics most of the time, hence the awesome android. The awesome part of his name, by the way, isn't meant to indicate a positive trend, like this isn't the cool android or the great android. By awesome, Stan Lee meant awe-inspiring, and this is one of those old characters that I personally have never clicked with. The awesome android is a humanoid robot that varies in height depending on the artist drawing it. Here, the android is about 12 to 15 feet tall, with gray skin covering its body, and it has no face. Instead, it has a gray square, like a fleshy rectangle for a head. The android is a physical powerhouse, meant to be a complement to the Thinker's great intellect. So the android starts to move, Johnny tries to warn the Avengers, and the android swats him. This gets the Avengers' attention, but before they can do anything about it, the Skull guys shoot them with nanite gas clouds. One of them shouts to cover the heroes first, then the rest of the hall. It'll only take a few moments, and then everyone here will be theirs to command. Johnny flames on, confident that his fire will protect him from the nanites. One of the Avengers, Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man, transforms into his purple energy form. Made of ionic energy, Wonder Man has no nervous system for the nanites to attack, plus this allows him to fly, and he has super strength. So he is fine. Except, for his friends getting mind-controlled in their attempts to beat the ever-loving no swearing out of him. The Human Torch charges at the android while Wonder Man works on moving innocent bystanders away from the scene. That doesn't take very long, though, and the nanite-controlled Avengers quickly begin to attack them both. Thanks to the way the nanites work, the Avengers have all of the skills and tactics that they normally have, so they begin to get the upper hand pretty quickly. But Puppy finishes teleporting Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, and Marvel Girl into the convention center, and then they join the fight. The two teams brawl for a little bit, but that is exactly what Mr. Fantastic wanted them to do. Now that all the heroes are gathered up in one place, Mr. Fantastic activates a small device which emits an electromagnetic pulse that specifically targets the core processing chip of the nanites. That'll fry the chips, free the heroes, and bring this whole situation to a close. Save for the awesome android. So the Invisible Woman and Marvel Girl team up their force fields, and they launch the android out of the convention center. It flies over a mile away, landing in the bay near an aircraft carrier. Mr. Fantastic, the Human Torch, the Invisible Woman, and Marvel Girl give chase, looking to capture the android. As they approach, Mr. Fantastic shouts for them to pause, recognizing that something is wrong with that carrier. But the warning comes just a bit too late. The carrier opens fire with a massive energy blast. The Invisible Woman and Marvel Girl throw up their shields, blocking the attack, but it still knocks them out cold. On the aircraft carrier, the Mad Thinker, who is a Caucasian male with shoulder-length brown hair wearing a dark jumpsuit, classically green, stands with the Red Skull. The Red Skull is a German male whose entire head is bald, totally red, and he has no nose, and he's dressed in a dark military-esque outfit. The pair of them snipe at each other's failures in classic villain style. The Thinker is the one who was behind the nanites and that energy blast, and the only reason that he failed was because of an unexpected variable in his plans, meaning Marvel Girl. The Red Skull tells the Thinker to bring the android aboard so they can leave, and they do so. The water around the carrier begins to churn as it lifts into the air. This is no boat. This is actually a shield helicarrier that the Skull recently took ownership of. Claremont spends an entire page explaining how the carrier reveals itself, why it's such a bad deal for the whole world, and how neither the Fantastic Four or the Avengers can stop it. He also says that the Skull has music playing, specifically Chopin's Funeral March, and, for real, the Red Skull has a soundtrack to play him out? I'm not sure if that's the coolest thing that he's ever done, or if it's the stupidest, but I kind of dig the sheer audacity of it. Reed then finishes his story in the courtroom. Federal agents seized the manufacturing plant with the nanites, and, using the data that they found there, Reed has been able to neutralize the nanites that controlled the Avengers, their other friends, and even the guys who made up Skull. They weren't volunteers. They were nanite-controlled slaves. The Fantastic Four and the Avengers have been working alongside a third party, a company called Damage Control, to effect repairs to the convention center. Reed even has documents from the U.S. Attorney's offices from New York and San Diego to confirm as much. Judge Wolf is impressed by Reed's very thorough telling. He asks the district attorney's office if they have any complaints, but they don't, so Judge Wolf dismisses the entire case. Off the record, though, the judge asks if Reed and his associates will be addressing the whole Red Skull has a carrier and plots to enslave mankind thing. Reed assures Judge Wolf that everything that can be done is being done. But Reed honestly isn't worried about the Red Skull right now. Inside, his concern lies with the cosmic storm that is approaching. It may very well hold the power to destroy everything that they know. And Reed still has no clue how to stop it. Well, Reed, maybe we should have spent this issue exploring that idea rather than this mismatched boogaloo of courtroom drama, family shenanigans, and uninteresting superhero fighting. Which sounds harsh, because I actually think the back end of this issue works pretty well. If we lost the first 3 or 4 pages of this issue, all of that bullshit setup that I complained about earlier, the rest of this is pretty good. The interactions between Valeria, Reed, and Sue work pretty well, and while the Cosmic Storm stuff isn't really explained at all, it is at least interesting. The sheer scope and mystery of it are very engaging. The Red Skull's appearance here picks up shortly after his appearance in the Uncanny X-Men and X-Men annuals for 1999, in which he gained control of that helicarrier. I actually enjoy seeing that plot line picked up here, because I read those annuals back when they were first published, and it really annoyed me that the X-Books never continued that plot thread at all. Claremont doesn't touch the idea again in his Fantastic Four run, but it is nice to see it used somewhere else. It is another example of Claremont using the X-Books for his ideas, rather than stories about the Fantastic Four, which is a bit frustrating, but I do think that the Red Skull is a good general fit. While he is classically a Captain America bad guy, he basically represents the surrendering of free will, which the Fantastic Four do kind of represent pretty well. While this isn't a natural fit, I think it's a good idea, and I enjoy Claremont continuing to use unconventional villains for this book. The Mad Thinker is a classic Fantastic Four villain, though, so him being here makes a lot of sense. The Skull is typically a charismatic leader with access to monetary resources, but he is selfish and evil, so allying with him tends to be a temporary thing for most supervillains. Here, the Mad Thinker got to field test his stolen technology against some of the most formidable foes in the Marvel Universe, and he got away at the end of it. That is a pretty good day for a guy like the Thinker. That doesn't explain how the Thinker or the Skull came into possession of those nanites, or why they gave them to Absorbing Man and Titania in issue 22, though. Remember, it's confirmed here that those nanites are one and the same. My personal guess is that the Skull and Thinker wanted to field test them against a powerful single hero, so they targeted She-Hulk, and, after seeing their efficacy, they then moved on to the Avengers. The Fantastic Four were just an unforeseen party in this adventure, and that goes especially for Valeria. Perhaps my biggest complaint about the nanites is the conflicting ways in which they are used. Valeria tells us that the nanites make their hosts susceptible to suggestion. So after being infected by them, someone should tell the host to do something, and then the person would do it. But we're never actually shown that happening. No one orders the Avengers to attack the Fantastic Four, nor did Titania or Absorbing Man tell the Thing or Bounty to attack Valeria. It's not a big jump to say that the nanites make their hosts susceptible to commands, and that the nanites themselves are programmed to attack specific targets, which could then be any of the heroes of the Marvel Universe. That would fix this small plot hole and still make everything work, but that's not what we got here, and so I'm left slightly annoyed. Of particular note, to me at least, is Valeria's costume in this issue. She has traded her metal gray gauntlets for white ones, the same for her boots, and she has ditched her green Doom cloak, although her nails are still painted with Doom's face on them, so don't worry. She's still stylin'. This signifies Valeria's acceptance into the Fantastic Four, as she is moving away from her Doom heritage and closer to her fantastic heritage. That's a nice physical example of her emotional state, and I really appreciate that. Larroca has been a fairly straightforward artist in this run so far, basically just drawing what's happening, but not doing any heavier lifting to convey story concepts or emotional states. So it is nice to see him stretch his legs a little bit more. Well, enough of that. Let's move on to issue 24. A storm rages as we open the comic. The Fantastic Four, plus Caldonia, Puppy, Valeria, and Franklin, had gone up to the roof of their pier home, hoping to take in the lovely morning. Puppy had tried to warn them that something was wrong, though. All morning long he had whined and danced in circles, attempting to pull them deeper into the building, closer to safety. They hadn't followed him, though, and now powerful winds shove waves upon them, battering them. Then the whole world shifts. Claremont's narration describes it like a strobe effect. With each passing moment, the entire world changes. New York first turns into a sci-fi futuristic version of itself, then a ruined Earth version featuring Red Wing and Lucas, then it's a dinosaur world, then an Asian-themed one. The only real constant are the basic heights and shapes of the buildings, and a young woman who approaches the pier. Wilhelmina Lumpkin, the male woman of the Fantastic Four, climbs up to the roof, surprised to find them on their roof, in their costumes, and bracing for something. Because now the storm is just gone. As if it never was at all. "Y'all okay?" she asks, pulling out their mail. Reed assures her that, they're fine. Everything is fine, life is grand, and everything is perfectly normal. You don't even have to worry about it. Have a nice day. But Ben says otherwise. He holds up their mail, because each piece of it is stamped with postage matching one of the realities that they just saw. This surprises Reed. In that case, things are actually worse than he thought. Now that is how you open an issue. This builds on ideas that Claremont's already established. It has some mystery to it, and it is both an interesting visual and intellectual threat. Having Puppy sense its first wave feels right, as animals really do sense natural disasters before they happen to some degree. I also thought that it was pretty cute that Claremont snuck in a Redwing and Lucas appearance. That's a cute way to reward long-term readers of this run. It is also a bit frustrating of a tease, as it almost makes you think that Claremont has a future use for the characters. But I assure you, if he does, we don't get there. But overall, I still like this opening, especially when compared to our last issue. The cast then moves inside for breakfast, except for Reed, who has moved to his lab. Everyone is pretty shaken by what occurred on the roof. Ben contacted the Avengers and anyone else that he could, but no one seems to have experienced the chaos storm. He notices that Franklin in particular seems kind of down, and when asked why, Franklin is worried that this is his fault. Those are dream worlds, as he calls them, and he can make his dreams real. Valeria assures him that this isn't the case. So long as she's around, that power of his is negated, and he is a normal child. And I'm sorry, hold on, sorry to interrupt. But what? Valeria can negate Franklin's power? No one mentioned that little thing before. If that's true, then it really lends some credence to Reed's idea that Valeria is a creation of Franklin. Perhaps Franklin's powers created Valeria, and now they have to keep making her, like a computer constantly rendering a 3D model, or a YouTube video needing to buffer. And so then Franklin doesn't have his powers anymore because they're already occupied. Plus, if Franklin doesn't have his powers anymore, then the Namorada thing last issue has to be a function of the Chaos Storm because it can't be Franklin's fault. This idea is really intriguing to me, as it solves the problem that Franklin's powers represent, but it's also really just out of nowhere. Claremont hasn't done anything to set this idea up or show some evidence of it other than that Namorada thing, so this is a bit sudden. Valeria is also back in her half Fantastic Four, half Doctor Doom costume, which I don't like. I thought that Valeria adopting a more fantastic look was a sign of her acceptance into this version of her family, but maybe it was just a temporary thing or a whim of Salvador Larroca. It does serve to highlight some of the story elements in the next scene, so I'm a bit torn on it being here. Valeria continues to comfort Franklin, telling her to trust him. After all, she is his sister. But why should they trust her? Johnny asks. She's a Von Doom, daughter of the Fantastic Four's greatest enemy. If her being here really does counter Franklin's powers, then maybe that's a bad thing for the Fantastic Four. Sue shuts her brother down, arguing that Valeria has proven herself to them repeatedly at this point. Reed enters the room, armed with books and charts. He agrees with Sue, but also with Johnny. The young man's concerns aren't unfounded, it's just that his timing and delivery sucks balls. More importantly, they have a chaos storm threatening all of reality to stop first. Reed drops his stuff on the table, asking his family for help. The Fantastic Four have years of experience dealing with the unknown and the cosmic, so if anyone can do this, it's going to be them. Plus, insight from the rest of the family may illuminate something that Reed hasn't considered yet. So they all go to work, separating... Wait, I thought we were teaming up to solve this. Like, did Claremont really write a scene in which Reed asks the Fantastic Four for their help solving this matter, and they all go their separate ways? What the hell? Okay, writing slips aside, Claremont has Franklin and Puppy move through the pier, checking on the various members of the cast. They're our framing device. Johnny and Caldonia make sure that the warehouse has room for refugees, and it does. Then they begin to check the stored supplies. Ben contacts the superhero community, including the Avengers, Tony Stark, and Charles Xavier, to update them with Reed's current data and ask for their help. They promise to do what they can, leaving Ben alone. He's frustrated by his inability to do anything of real meaning. He's just a strong guy, and a strong guy can't stop this from coming. So he'll do what he can and get that information to those who can solve this. Now, scared, alone, and kind of bored, Franklin ends up outside of his father's lab, hungry for attention. Valeria exits the lab and comforts her little big brother. Franklin is worried that if she leaves the lab, then she won't be able to help Reed find a solution. But Valeria thinks that she was probably getting on Reed's nerves. He was just too polite to say anything. So, better that she spend some time with him. The two go and play for a bit, leaving Reed to solve this. He is aware of Valeria's move, watching the pair leave, and is eternally grateful for Valeria's existence. He then runs a possible scenario to save Earth on his holographic computers, but it fails. Disappointed, but inspired by his family, Reed continues to work. We next move to Sue, who watches Franklin and Valeria play soccer outside for a minute. They remind her of herself and Johnny as kids, actually, but she can't spend her time lounging in memories of the past. She checks on Reed's most recent scenarios and sees it end in failure. Unwilling to risk the lives of her children, Sue holds up a large jewel, and then she cracks it in half. A voice off-panel suspected that Sue would use it eventually. How, they ask. Can they help? Okay, that's interesting. I have no idea what that's about. No one has been shown to give Sue a jewel in this run, nor has anyone been particularly, jewel-themed, so I got nothing here. This one's just a full-blown mystery. That night, the Human Torch heads into town, looking to burn off some energy while doing some crime fighting. Ben goes into the city as well, but he is dressed in streetwear, walking his old neighborhood of Yancey Street. Normally, the kids here, the Yancey Street gang, would prank Ben whenever he passed through, but tonight he has a guardian. Bounty stops the kids, popping their water balloons, and then reveals herself to Ben, eager to spend some time with the man she loves. Ben, however, doesn't appreciate her interfering. It's not like the kids can hurt him, and he knows the deal here. Given what's coming, aka the potential end of all reality, he figured that he would give them one last shot at him. Bounty doesn't understand that at all. And that's fair, because Ben doesn't get her either, although he's referring to her affection for him. And she smiles. It's no mystery. She doesn't hide who she is or what she wants from anybody. Shaking his head, Ben says that this could never work. Bounty takes off his hat. How will they ever know if they never try? She steps in, and the pair finally kiss. And waiting in the shadows is the Yancey Street Gang, armed with super soakers. Back at the pier, Sue is in Franklin's room, packing a Tesseract suitcase for her son. She's got clothes in there, his favorite toys, a preview copy of the new Harry Potter book, which would have been the Goblet of Fire, by the way, but it's his stuffed dog that finally makes her stop. He has slept with it every night since he was born. He can't sleep without it. And Sue can't imagine her life without him in it. Valeria, robed after her evening shower, pauses outside of the room. She wants to make sure that her mom, that is, Sue, is okay. Sue shares her dismay about sending Franklin away, but Valeria assures her that Reed is going to find a solution. He always does. He actually reminds Valeria of her own father. Sue replies that Reed thinks the same about her and Valeria. She then offers to brush Valeria's hair for her, and Valeria says like her aunt did for Sue after her mother died. Sue blinks. She's never told anyone that, not even Reed. When Valeria was younger, Sue told her. There is a quiet moment, and the pair hug, finally connecting. And then, we jump outside to drive Becca to, lunchtime? Reed and Johnny are sitting out at an outdoor cafe, and Ben and Johnny are just joining them. Johnny comments that they were both soaked to the bone, indicating that the Yancey Street gang succeeded in their ambush. Johnny uses his powers to dry them both off, and they were about to have a meal together when a gigantic fiery 4 appears in the sky. The group return to the pier, ready to face down an emergency, but they find a set dinner table. Sue, Valeria, Alessandre, Franklin, and Puppy are all dressed up nicely. If the world might actually end in a few days, then they're going to take an evening to enjoy themselves. The new additions need to change into their formal wear, and once they have, they all enjoy a nice night. Ben tells Franklin about his most harrowing test flights. Johnny talks about an off-road rally that he drove in a Jeep that he rebuilt from the frame. Alison talks about her battles in her native timeline, and so on and so forth. It's a night of friendship and love and bonding, and it's actually a really nice scene. The discussion goes on long into the night, until Franklin can't stay awake any longer. Reed and Sue put him to bed, talking about how much they love him, and then they go to bed themselves. And I mean that biblically. Eventually, they too go to sleep. But it doesn't last the night. An alarm rings out through the pier, jolting them both awake. Reed can't believe that this is happening. His readings are saying that the storm is falling upon them now. He shouts for the computer to display the storm, and something has accelerated its schedule. There's a gravity field on the opposite side of the sun that matches Earth exactly, and that has interfered with the storm, sped it up. Sue isn't really interested in the cause. She grabs Franklin and tells Reed to go get Puppy. Reed is like, why? And Sue just tells him to do it. And while they are doing so, reality slips. Sue and Reed both turn invisible and stretch at the same time, their molecules merging them into one being, one shared existence with all of everything. And then reality returns to normal. Reed pauses, fascinated by the experience, but Sue doesn't have time to waste. She drags him toward the hangar where Ben and Johnny are finishing preparing the rocket. They've been putting this together while Reed has been in the lab, and it is ready to go. Finally, Reed stops. What exactly is going on here? Sue explains that this threat that they're facing is perhaps the biggest threat that they have ever faced, and Sue can't be effective if she is worried about her son the entire time. So she has got a plan to keep him safe, and that is what they are doing now. She didn't tell Reed because, honestly, she expected him to solve this problem. He's never failed her before. Reed is still hurt at being left out and asks where Franklin is being sent. And rather than just telling him, which wouldn't take all that much time at all, Sue says that she's called in a marker and to leave it at that. Ben and Johnny say goodbye to their nephew, telling him that Caldonia, Valeria, and Puppy will go along with him to keep him safe. Valeria isn't there yet, but Caledonia and Puppy climb inside with the boy. Reed's costume chirps. The chaos storm is approaching. Their exit window is closing fast. Either the rocket launches now, or it doesn't launch. Johnny lights up, flying away to find Valeria, but she secretly ducks back into the room once he leaves, and shuts the rocket's door. She tells Franklin that she loves him, and the rocket begins to take off. Franklin shouts that he loves them all. And then he's gone. Reed and Sue turn to Valeria, horrified that she is still here, maybe going to die. Does she have any idea what she just did? Johnny comes over the communicators in their costumes, cutting off the berating. They need to get to the roof now. When they do, the team discovers that a massive wave towers over New York City. This wave is literally 3 times taller than any building that we see. Hidden in the rising waters is a face, with sharp, angular metal features hidden within the folds of a cloak. This wave isn't just literal doom itself, it also heralds the man, Victor Von Doom. Ooh-wee! That is a solid ending. Oh, I dig that. We open this issue pretty fast-paced, we breathe for a bit in the center, and then we end even faster-paced. And for the most part, this all works. While Claremont knows how to craft a thrilling tale, it's honestly his ability to explore his cast's personalities and have them grow over time that makes him one of the greats, and, if I'm honest, that's what I think this run has really been missing. To be fair, the last time that Claremont was on a monthly book, it was Uncanny X-Men for like 20 years, so he's also used to working on a scale of decades, not scant issues. Claremont's exploration of Reed without his intellect during the first year was really solid, even if the stories that contained it were a bit off balance. But the second year spent so much time bouncing around reality and the negative zone, and the cast could never really catch their emotional breath, and so neither could the audience. Using this issue to let them all just be human was pretty great. And it's interesting to me to see where Claremont puts that focus. The one story that Ben has had going on, almost at all in this run, is his not quite a relationship with Bounty, which finally has something happen. I've said before that I don't think that Ben and Bounty could ever work in the long term, but that also doesn't mean that either character should deny themselves the possibility of happiness in the now. It's also interesting to me that, with what might have been some of his final moments, Ben doesn't contact his old flame, Alicia Masters, or spend the evening with Alyssa Moy, who he spent a lot of time with at the beginning of Claremont's run, or even have one final poker game with his superhero friends. No. He chooses to give the kids of Yancey Street one more chance to prank him. Maybe one last chance to be happy. And that's pretty sweet of him. Johnny, meanwhile, chooses to leave. Claremont has maintained that Johnny finds Alisande attractive, and he has complimented her fairly often, but Johnny has also never courted her more, nor has she attempted to found more of a relationship with him. Like Ben, Johnny doesn't spend what could be his final night with his friends, or his family, or someone that he might love. He spends it burning off his passions, fighting crime. I, personally, take this to mean that Johnny isn't in love with Alisande. He cares for her, sure, but I don't think that he's in love with her. Reed and Sue are the most interesting here, given Sue's final moment revelation. There's something kind of mean to how Sue handled protecting Franklin. She didn't give Reed a heads up or offer a plan or even discuss having a plan with him. She just let him work to solve this crisis, and she looked after Franklin. Which, to be fair, is kind of what the pair normally does. But this also sort of feels like the culmination of Claremont's background story for Sue. Back in issue 4, as the team was headed to face Terminus, Sue spoke to Alicia about fearing for her son's safety when left behind. And then, as the four worked their way through the negative zone, Sue spoke to Johnny about how much she needed to hold her son. Reed has always been focused on keeping them safe or solving the imminent threat, and Sue has always had the more emotional connection to their child. I also understand the story reasons for not telling Reed about where Franklin was going or who he was going to be with, but I don't like it. There is no reason for Sue not to tell Reed other than comic book drama, and honestly, I'm not sure where you put someone to keep them safe when you are facing the end of reality. Like, that's kind of like protecting your king in chess when the opponent is a hurricane that's going to knock the board over and sweep it like a state away. It's just too big. There is a time shift that annoys the ever-loving crap out of me, though. I tried to breeze past it in my retelling of this issue, but immediately after Sue's scene with Valeria, we cut to Reed and Johnny in the city, and everything is colored as if it is day. Then the Fantastic Four flare goes up, and it is still day. And then they return to the pier, and the dinner table is set next to a sliding glass door that looks over the nearby river, and guess what? It's day! And that night, when the alarm goes off and they all rocket Franklin away to safety and then go outside, guess what? It's no swearing day again! The first time shift could have been a coloring error because Claremont doesn't write it as if time has passed. Larroca's art does nothing to differentiate between night and day other than drawing the moon in the sky, so an error is possible. But it still bugs me because Reed is there at all. I thought that we were trying to save reality, Reed. Focus, man. You don't have time for a trip into the city and a coffee. And this double annoys me because Reed is a character that classically skips meals or loses whole days while chewing on a scientific bone, but he doesn't here. He just, no swearing, soft to have a meal with his brother-in-law. Meanwhile, his wife is having a bounce bag put together for her kid so that she can save him from the destruction of all that is in case her husband fails. And he's off eating lunch. So yeah, while overall I do think that this is an enjoyable read and the character moments really sell this issue, it does have some frustrating points for me. The setup for it is great, and the looming threat of a wave of reality is awesome, especially one that has Doom's face inside of it. So that's keeping me interested in what's coming next. But before we see the Chaos Storm's effect on both Earth and our heroes, we have some catching up to do. Dr. Doom has been missing since the Heroes Reborn: The Return miniseries, when Thor battled him into an interdimensional portal where they would be lost for all of time. So where did Doom end up? Join me next week to find out, as we all return to the Reborn Earth. We'll be kicking off the Heroes Reborn event, starting with the one-shots Doomsday and Ashima in an episode I can only call... I'm gonna sing the Doom song now. A doom 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 doom. I'm just kidding. I love Invader Zim. Next week, it's gonna be Comic Book Breakdown, episode 12.14. Doomsday. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.